Hey YouTubers, DasGregor here for another exciting chapter of the adventures of Prince Edmund. I am on chapter 4 and it is entitled The Forest of Doom. Following the map that the princess had given him, he found a path that seemed to lead to where he was going. He walked along the path for many kilometers when he approached a small group of what looked like elves. Nah, it couldn't be. Then he realized he was in Xavier, and anything is possible. He started toward the group, and when a rock hit him in the back, he spun around to find that the elves were circling him, and all of them seemed to be armed with a weapon. He then realized that they were under the spell of the witch, so he decided that it would be smart to arm himself to protect him. But he could not find anything near him except the ground. He then remembered the amulet, so he got it out. Amulet from the Wizard of Zanzibar. Please give me something to defend myself against these elves. Suddenly, he was holding a long, broad, jeweled sword. Edmund almost dropped it from the weight, but he managed to lift and defend himself nonetheless. After a while, and a few had been slain, the elves concluded that he would not be beaten so easily, and in their despair to save themselves, they fled for safety. Edmund then turned and began to walk down the path again. It wasn't long before he came upon a creek where he sat to take a rest and eat. It was about the middle of the day, and he was starved. He had forgotten how it felt to be famished. Then he realized that he had no food to eat. Without thinking, he got out the amulet and said, "Amulet from the Wizard of Zanzibar, please give me something to eat." Nothing happened. Then he remembered what the Princess Andrea had said about if the amulet did not give you what you wanted, then it meant that you did not need it. But how could he not need food? For food is a major portion that makes human bodies work. Then he looked around, and to his astonishment, there were berry bushes surrounding the river on the other side. Edmund then decided to find a shallow spot in the river, and after walking a few meters, he found a spot that was shallow enough that he was able to cross. On the other side of the river, there were many more, just bushes everywhere, full of berries in great multitudes. Edmund found a bush that had some berries, and that he recognized that were somewhat familiar to him back in Wisconsin. So he picked himself many handfuls, and also enough to fill his pouch, so that if he was not as lucky as this time to find anything to eat, he may have some for the next time. He crossed the river again, and since it was shadier on the other side, he laid his head down to rest. Then he seemed to be so tired that he fell into a deep, fast sleep. When Edmund awoke, it was very dark out, and he was without shelter. He gathered up some sticks and twigs and set them to the ground. Edmund then realized that he had no matches to light the fire. He thought for a long time, and then remembered that his uniform was that of steel chain metal, and so if he were to find a rock, he might be able to start the fire with a few sparks. From the light of the moon, he looked for a stone that could serve the purpose. Edmund found one and struck his arm where the sparks could not touch his hands. After many unsuccessful attempts, he finally lit the fire. It blazed red and blue and so on. Edmund leaned against the tree and soon dozed off again. During the night, many small animals came to the light, but none came any closer than a few meters. When morning came and the fire was nothing but a few smoldering ashes, Edmund stomped out the rest with his foot. He ate a few more berries and started his journey once more. On the way, he met another group of elves, but instead of staying to fight, they ran away with fear in their eyes. Shrugging his shoulders at the sight of them running instead of fighting, he kept on walking. After he had walked a few kilometers, he came to a dreadful-looking forest. He looked at his map and decided that it was the Forest of Doom. Edmund remembered the warning that the Princess Andrea had given him about these forests, for they are not natural, but conjured up by the wicked witch. Before going into the woods, he took out the amulet. and said, "Amulet from the Wizard of Zandabar, please give me something that I may protect myself in this enchanted forest set here to snare the witch's enemies." With that, there was a bolt of lightning, and he found himself with nothing but a ruby-studded dagger. And with a worried face, Edmund went into the woods. He seemed to be walking in circles, but no matter how many times he had the urge to turn around, he would not. He kept on going. After a long time had passed and his stomach began to growl, he stopped to have a bite to eat. He ate some of his berries and sat in a clearing that he found himself in, and he decided this is a good time to rest. Suddenly, he was lifted from the ground by what seemed to be a vine. Sure enough, he realized that he was being carried to a great big plant. He began to struggle and realized he was only making the grip of the vine stronger. He then remembered his dagger. He took it out and began to chop at the vines. He cut the vines just as he reached the plant. It dropped him and he landed with a thump. With him found on the ground, he picked up his dagger, and quickly the vines disappeared. He picked himself up and began his journey again. It soon became too dark to see, but he wasn't about to stop for fear of being taken in by another of its kind. So Edmund did the next best thing. He took the amulet and asked for a lantern so that he could see his way through the rest of the forest. The amulet granted the wish, but instead of getting a lantern, he got a small light that seemed to lead the way through the forest. After a while, he began to become very sleepy, but the light would not let him stop. It kept on going, so Edmund was forced to follow it. Finally, he found himself out of the forest. The light had disappeared, and he went on walking. After walking like a zombie for at least a kilometer, he stopped to make his fire and rest for the night. He looked everywhere and could not find anything except for a bit of high-growing grass. It was better than nothing, so he got himself a good-sized bushel and brought them back to where he'd found a good soft spot to lay. Finding a stone, which was very difficult, he sat and was able to start the fire. Don't you hate it when you're almost at the end and you mess up? Let me start that over. Finding no stone, he decided he would have to depend upon the amulet. But he hated to waste its power over something so little. But he had to. And I believe that is the end of chapter 4. Now I'd like to remind some of my new subscribers, if they are watching this, this is a story that I wrote when I was 14 years old, many years ago. I'm doing this because I'm finding a lot of my fiction that I wrote throughout the years, putting it out there. And so I haven't tried to rewrite this. I'm just going through it and reading it as I wrote it. A lot of errors in it, a lot of misspellings, a lot of typos. So it causes me to stumble, but I don't want to rewrite because I don't want to screw up what I really wrote as a 14-year-old. So I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you'll listen to chapters 1 through 3 that are already published on YouTube, and to catch up if you haven't. Hopefully this is a good enough chapter, and we'll soon have chapter 5 out there, which is entitled The Drudgery of Mount Haunt. Until next time, tschüss, auf Wiedersehen, arrivederci. Goodbye, good evening, good day, whatever you're having, have it, and enjoy it. Bye.